Hi, and welcome to the Magnificent Misfits podcast, where we intimately explore the lives of successful misfits, delving beyond their achievements to reveal the human stories behind their triumphs. A misfit is anyone who has taken on a journey different from their peers who come from a similar background and who have dared to walk on an undiscovered path. Their stories and journey will hopefully inspire other misfits to carve their own paths. Join me, Sid, as I meet and interact with these amazing people to discuss their life stories. Hello, everyone, and welcome to yet another episode of Magnificent Misfits, where we speak to some amazing people on the journeys they've had in life. And today I have another very interesting, exciting guest who I'm really curious to know more about. Somath. I'll give you a short introduction to Somath, and there's a lot to chat with him about today. Somath's Instagram bio is the easiest way to introduce him. Quote, I draw, write, and work on movies, unquote. But that wouldn't do any justice to explain his amazing work. Somath is an artist who makes some really interesting illustrations. He's a filmmaker who has written and directed 2 student short films and 1 professional short film. He's also a production and designer of films. You would have seen his work on the award-winning film Quote by Chaitanya Tamane. He's also a Superani artist. We'll ask Somath about that, a little more about what Superani is. All this is while he's working full-time as an art director at DNEG. In terms of his educational background, Somath has an undergraduate degree in electrical engineering and interestingly later on went to do a master's in animation from IIT Bombay. I know Somath through a mutual friend, and I've just been in awe of his talent from the time I got to know of his work. I hope to get to know him today, and I hope all of you will also take a lot away from this interaction today. So welcome, Somath, and thank you so much for doing this today.
It's a pleasure. Pleasure, Siddharth. Happy to be here.
Yeah, likewise, we're happy to have you here today. And I've, of course, given an introduction, but we'd love to hear more from you, maybe like an introduction. Where did you grow up? Little bit about your childhood and what got you to where you are today in terms of your profession and life.
I was born and brought up in Lucknow, and but I'm a second generation immigrant because my father and mother. My father was actually older to me in the sense that he was born before independence, and it was during independence that he had to kind of come down to India, and he lost a lot of his wealth, land, property, whatever he had. He had inherited from his father, and he was like a 14-year-old boy back then. And then when he got into a job, he came to Lucknow. He was in GSI, Geological Survey of India. Now, my mother is, she's also Bengali, but she is from Assam. There's a small town called Karimganj, which skims the border. It's just right at the border of Bangladesh, India and Bangladesh. I have kind of been familiarized with both the cultures. Both are essentially from Bangladesh. Essentially, they are also Bangladeshi immigrants. So their cultures used to overlap. But even there, I could see the distinguishing elements as to, dad's culture has these elements to it, and ma's culture has certain other things. When I was growing up, it was not a thing because as a kid, you don't really realize, right? Your immediate surrounding becomes your culture. But when you get into that point where you can question these things, it definitely used to play in my head. I don't deny that even being in Lucknow, the kind of surrounding that I had, people did make me realize that I was a Bengali. There are these offhand jokes which are like, "Are ye to machli khata hai? Are ye to sab khata hai?" The way Bengalis, the term for even for drinking is khana. So pani khana ho jata hai. So those are the kind of jokes. And when people used to bully it, I at a very early age, I started realizing that the only way to tackle bullying is bullying back. So then I used to say, "Ki acha, to fir why is smoking peena in Hindi?" So I used to if you attack my culture, not attack, I didn't see it as attack. But if you can pull my leg on that, I can pull your leg on that as well. I mean, on that. And it was never me against them or anything, but I had to figure out that it's not always about humiliating somebody. The earliest memories of bullying I have is that I was there to play cricket, and I was the youngest. And the reason why they included me in the team was because I had one of my relatives had given me a ball which was like a really like a leather ball or something. So and they included me in the team, but they didn't really like me. So when I went into bat, somebody pulled my pants,
Oh,
and
damn.
everybody laughed. And that is when I realized, oh, okay, this is I'm telling you, when I was like 3 to 4 years old, I did not even have the brains to process. Maybe not four, maybe five. I don't. These are hazy memories at this point of time. But I was really young to kind of process all of this. So I grew up in that, and I was always made aware that something's different. Funnily, when I go back to say Bengal, I don't belong to that cultural environment at all. I am a misfit there
Hmm.
because I can't speak the Bengali that they speak. I My food habits are quite different. My belief systems are quite different. So then they bully me. It's become a joke now that I don't belong to either of the two communities, and I have kind of imbibed it now. There is a Groucho Marx joke, which I think Woody Allen mentions it in Annie Hall, and he says, "I don't think I can belong to a club that can take me as a member." And I have
Interesting.
taken it rather seriously because the moment I realize, okay, any belief system is this, I try and be the opposition myself and try and figure out where I don't belong in that belief system, and I try to isolate. So the reason why it worked out was because as I mentioned, I had a very old dad. He was 52 or something, and I was born, and I was way past the age where he could control me. So I was free. Even when I was like I a larger part of my life is basically me taking decisions, making mistakes, and learning from them. Nobody ever told me that you should do this, you should do that. So that kind of worked out for me, I guess.
Okay. So just to extend that, okay, so would you say that going for engineering, later, of course, you went on, you do something totally different now. Is that also something that you did, you thought is the right thing to do, then you did, and then you realize, okay, this is probably not what I want to do. And I,
Huh. Since you belong to the same generation, you kind of are aware that there was the 90s and the early 2000s were that period. Anybody who was growing up in that period, and all of a sudden, people were more aware that engineering could lead you to study in the States, and that was happening. And engineering, medical, these professions were becoming a lot more popular, and because of which everybody, even if they were not really good at academics, it was kind of,
it was an expectation, I guess.
yeah. You're naturally expected to kind of you take it up as a subject. Maths was something that I have like fond memories of. I really like maths. I think that became my natural course of action. Back in those days, I did not even know. Nobody really tells you the kind of maths that one enjoys. You kind of discover it after a point of time, right?
Yes, correct.
And you don't nobody really explains you as to the kind of maths that for that generation. Maths is accountancy, is maths, statistics is maths, all of that. So
Correct.
and that's not really the kind of thing that I wanted to be a part of.
Got
But
it.
engineering became something that I became naturally inclined towards. Also, I don't deny that there was this unsaid burden on me that I had to take up engineering, you know.
Okay.
So,
And but did you were you an artist at that point in time? Did you draw then, or is it something you discovered later?
I come from a family which is into creative arts. The Pals, if you look at all the Durga Puja festivals, no,
Hmm.
most of the sculptors that you will see are Pals.
Oh, really? Okay. I wasn't
Yeah.
aware of
So
that.
yeah. So we belong to that community. Essentially, you are. Uh, Dad was a sculptor as well. He had elements of self-made, uh, being a self-made artist as well. But he did go to he did study sculpture in Government College of Arts in Calcutta. So he had a
Got
very
it.
interesting job. He had a far more fascinating job than I can ever imagine. The paleontologists used to find fossils wherever. Say they found something in Bhopal. They what they would do is that they would take that fossil and they will make a wireframe of it. And dad's job was to make a life-size model of it. So
Wow.
at a very early age, I was kind of getting exposed to those books. I remember when Jurassic Park came out. I was
Hmm.
very young. Me and dad just had this bare minimum of understanding that the T-Rex did not belong to the Jurassic period. It belonged to the
Okay.
Triassic period. So we are these two snobs in the theater, discussing, this is not right. And I was like a putki 6 year old. But yeah, I did not understand any of it. Dad took me to that film because he was fascinated by how Spielberg managed to move all of those. He was curious about the animatronics and the robotics of it. So that's how.
Got it. So then I guess when you went on to do your masters, it wouldn't have been that big a surprise for the family, or they would have taken it okay, is what I'm guessing, right? Because they can have that creative bent.
Surprisingly, no. So
Oh,
my dad
really?
never has had an objection. My dad has been a very chilled out. Imagine somebody was seen Partition. No, Partition was
Hmm.
the lowest of their lives, right?
Right.
Because they absolutely lost everything. From then to building things up, you are always hopeful about life. He was always open to like, huh, you go ahead and try that. He would never, even when I came first in class, he never, if I got less marks, he would never question. My mom was a little more into, because she belonged to an academic family, she was a little, she would poke her nose into stuff. But dad was chilled out. And see, you will see the middle class plight here because the way our upbringing was done was to get out of that, certain salary segment or a certain class segment and jump that class to, have a more comfortable life.
Correct.
And Didi went on to become a doctor. And when I went into engineering, everybody was okay about it. But then I decided that I wouldn't, and there was a massive hue and cry about it. But then, thanks to this one college mate of mine, whose brother was in IIT Bombay, and he was aware of this department called IDC, that he kind of seduced me into it. You should try and the moment I went to IDC, I was like, yeah, this looks like a place where I might belong. There have been a lot of people whom I have had to thank. Uh, Anshuman, Abhinav, like these people were the ones who, despite me getting into engineering, they were always kind of planting that idea, that seed, that you should have taken something, think about this, think about taking it up as a career. And back then I was unsure. But I have a lot of people to thank to this. If I start listing, yeah, that'll be a podcast by itself. Yeah.
Actually, this is a nice segue. I was planning to ask you something else, but since you touched upon your growing up years, I actually want to talk about Death of a Father, okay, which is just for our listeners, it was ranked one of the 25 best Hindi films of the decade, 2010 to 2019. It's a beautiful short film. It's available on YouTube. I wanted to understand a couple of things, okay? So one is, of course, the story set in UP. It's a Bengali boy who comes from Bombay and seems like he's not. I mean, of course, there is the part where he has to take care of his father's death and all the formalities going through that. But also, it kind of is obvious that he's not comfortable in that setting anymore, right? He's moved out of there and he's no longer from
Yeah.
there. Did you actually? I mean, I don't know how much of it is your own life, or did you pick up things from people you saw around you?
So the genesis obviously was when my father passed away. I realized that generally in literature, in films, in any kind of documentation of where death is a part, it is quite a dramatic incident. Like things change. Like imagine Satyajit Ray's Pother Panchali. The With the grandma's death, there is death of innocence. That kid never goes back to the field to kind of look at trains. Then when the sister dies, his companion dies. They have to move away from that city completely. At every stage, whenever death happens, it's dramatic changes happen in
Yeah.
life. But in reality, when I experienced death, it was mundane. It was it was boring. It was stretched, like time had been stretched. You are reliving this moment, which is which has been stretched to eternity, that it doesn't end. And when I shared this with Chaitanya, very kindly he offered me if if I would be, and in a country where animation film is a novelty, having graduated, I've never got a chance to make somebody putting in money to make an animation. I said, yeah, I will.
Hmm.
And that is how it happened. I mean, he liked the idea that I was trying to document mundane hollowness around this. And yes, a lot of it is autobiographical. But at the same time, I don't associate it with the primary character with me. Babu as a character was a little too pure. He isn't me. I
Hmm.
have to say that. And that is the reason why I never chose to make it or call it a documentary or a documentary animation. I could have put the names there as my names, but I didn't. And the similarities that happened, the reason why I could have completely changed the tone of it as well. I could
Yeah.
have gone away from the overlaps with me and could have made it a very different film. But if you are trying to be honest about something, then every aspect is attached to that. I even for the name thing, and this used to happen to me a lot. Like my father used to write it as PAUL,
Yeah, I noticed that.
and I write it as PAL, and that is why I put that in the film because we tried a bunch of other combinations. Datta, Mishra, Misra, we tried but none of them had that harrowing feel. And the moment I include Pal, it automatically, without really communicating verbally, doing the exposition, it communicates. When he opens up his father's sketchbook,
Yeah.
you if anybody is aware of the fact that pals are now that you are aware that pals are kind of, you will now watch that and make that little association.
Oh, interesting. I never looked at it like that. Maybe now I need to watch it again now. Now I'm going to notice some of these nuances too. But I must say this, the detailing, I think I found, of course, the characters. See, it's a short film and it's only 10 minutes, but I somehow felt that I could still feel each of these characters. I could still feel what they're going through, the confusions and the mundane part, right? I mean, that's of course the theme, that you find all this is happening, but this guy Babu still oblivious to what's happening. So that I think also comes through
Yeah, and
the.
I think that's the reason why some of the shots, some of the duration of the shots. See, in animation, it is very difficult to make a long shot. Like in live action, what you can do is
And why is that?
because the way I animate, I draw each frame. So
Oh,
if you have if you have to make 1 second, there are ways to cheat it as well. But essentially, you have 24 drawings sometimes.
got it,
So,
got it.
like say an Ozu putting a camera somewhere and just the tree being there and just a leaf moving can be documented in real life. But in animation, if I try and do that, I will have to select a bunch of parts of the tree and actually animate it to create that little bit of movement. So it's a much more painful effort that way. Yeah, I
And you did
mean,
this whole movie by yourself. I was going to ask you. I mean, you of course wrote the movie. You also animated it, but were you the only person involved in?
I had the
Let me call it
stupid
production.
I had the stupid audacity to believe that I will do it all by myself. Halfway through it, we realized I can do it by myself. I took the help of people who are now very they're extremely talented artists in their own right. So here is where like I learned so much about sound design from Anita. She like imagine you have to set up a hospital. You know what
Hmm.
she does? She goes and sits in the hospital and she closes her eyes and listens to everything. What
Wow.
sounds like the hospital? And then she says, oh, there is the tube light has this sort of a buzz. Oh, the elevator has a very specific sound. Hospital elevators, if you go, they have a different
Yeah.
kind of a sound. So she
Yeah. Yeah.
sensitized me to all of that.
Yeah, and again, to the listeners, beautiful movie, Death of a Father. I'll share the link in the podcast notes, so please go and watch it. It's pretty amazing. I mean, you watch it and you'll tell why it's rated as one of the best 25 best movies. I briefly, Somnath, also wanted to touch upon the Candy Tree. I know it's a graduation film you made.
Yeah, it's so much, yeah.
Again, beautiful movie. I'll share the link. Who is Miludi? Okay, and why are you dedicating it to her?
So, so when it comes to filmmaking, na, I have this theory that my observations are my own, right? If I borrow somebody else's stuff, then it's his observations that I'm borrowing, and I might not have a proper understanding of it. So that's one of the reasons why whatever I try to do is essentially like I try to critique myself through all my films. That's my eventual philosophy of filmmaking. Coming back to Miludi, in
Yeah,
Candy Tree, almost all the stuff that you see the kid do,
yeah.
yeah, are me. Like I am that idiot who used to chase dogs with a bow and an arrow. I
Okay,
was that idiot who would, try all sorts of shit, except the planting of the candy tree, which was done by my Didi. So
oh, she
Didi,
actually did that, is it,
she
as a kid?
actually did that as a kid, and that is
Wow.
what inspired me to kind of make. And so Miludi is my Didi, because she
Oh,
did it, and her two kids who are actually when they were kids, my nieces, they were naughty like her. So
got
I
it.
wanted to dedicate it to the three of them. That spirit of planting the candy tree.
Yeah, and again, just to kind of compliment you on that movie too, there's I've seen this with, of course, Death of a Father too. In your writing, there's layers, right? There's like, if you just want to watch it for fun, you watch it for fun. There is a layer beneath that where you are made to think, okay, why is something happening? What does this candy tree mean? Why is this person not getting results? Why did the mound appear somewhere else? All of these questions, and then all of it gets answered towards the end. So I like the fact that in a short film you're able to, add these layers and get multiple aspects of that story in. So that's very interesting. How difficult is it to write short films? I mean, just
Oh, it's terribly difficult. It's terribly
is it?
difficult. See, one is the not the academic way, because there is no academic way, but so the West has documented storytelling and screenplay writing to quite an extent, right? They have
Yes.
books on how to do it to the point where they have even timed the film. So if you have 120 minutes of film, you write the first 30 minutes or the first 30 pages as this. So the
Correct.
conflict happens, the inciting incident happens, and all of that. So there, for the lack of a better word, there is a bit of a formula to it. But you soon realize that that's just there is you develop a certain aversion to it as well. You implement it, but the whole point is not fall into the trap of taking that seriously, right? So you try and see how you would break it
So let
without
me let
really
me let me
breaking
put
it.
it like this, Somnath. So let's say when you're writing a short film, you refer to the formula and all these books, Save the Cat and all these books
Yeah.
prescribe all these formulas, right? Is there something like that for a short film also? I'm not asking for a formula. I'm saying, do you have some rules to keep in mind saying that, okay, I want the story to have a beginning end, there has to be some reveal at the end, or some kind of rules you keep for yourself?
So short film, just by the nature of it, it allows you more freedom. There is less documentation in terms of what to document in a short film,
Yeah,
but obviously you can have that structure as well.
yeah,
But at the same time, there is more leeway, more room to be poetic or be more open ended in that way, because it's just
got
a
it.
shorter duration engagement, right? So
Yeah,
that way it allows you more, which sometimes makes it more challenging as well. By the time you are a certain age or whatever, when you're doing it as a part of your living, you get sensitized to certain things, and then you approach stuff with that sensitization. You understand?
got it.
Like, I am not the guy, like, if I have to write a commercial film and somebody asks me to write a film with sex, videotape, sorry, sex, lies, violence, whatever, I might write it. I'm not saying I will write it, but maybe for a commercial venture, I might. But when I naturally think of a story, those are not the parameters that excite me. Like this current short film that I'm working on, it's about age and a certain aspect of age that I don't think we talk about in films. Like a lot of times now, filmmaking is divisive. it should be divisive to an extent,
Yeah.
but the method they use is also very blatant.
Yeah.
So you can be divisive by being a little nuanced, which makes
Yeah.
you, uh, instead of being divisive, it becomes a little thought provoking, you know. Uh, but sometimes what happens is filmmakers fall into the trap of making it a little more obvious, like making right a little more right, wrong a little more wrong. You
More
understand?
black and white. I don't know
Ha,
if it's
more black and
politically
white.
correct to say, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like even with Death of a Father, I had that similar sort of an idea. And back Candy Tree ke waqt, to I don't think I even developed that philosophy for filmmaking. Back then, I was just loving this medium which could allow me to control everything that happens before me. So I was just going all gaga. But even with Death of a Father, I realized that I have to plant grays. Like Babu,
Yeah.
though he's a purist in some way, he doesn't believe in rituals,
Yeah.
but he doesn't believe in rituals to the point of being offensive to the people who believe it. Not offensive, he doesn't come across as somebody who jokes about it. And that is where I say the nuances. Because when your mother tells you, yaar, chilwale eyebrows, she comes from a certain belief system, right? But
Correct.
you have this, I don't know what you think of yourself, that you are the smartest looking dude in this world, or maybe the ugliest looking dude in this world. That if you take your eyebrows off, people will laugh at you, or, as if that matters by the end of it,
True.
So he doesn't believe to the point of not accounting for that one request. His mother really doesn't make any other request in the film, right? And he doesn't really entertain that. So there are grays to it as well. So there is those are the kind of grays that I wanted to document,
Got
which
it.
which are repeatedly things that I am in conflict with.
Got it. Okay, interesting. Look forward to that one. When will that come out?
I have
Any
no clue.
dates?
I have no clue.
Okay.
It's a 10-minute shot,
Okay.
and I am still at stage one of it. It'll go through 4 stages of animation before it finally happens. And in the first stage, I am at the 3-minute mark.
Got it. Okay.
So
Yeah,
there
I'm
will
not
be,
surprised you're doing so much. This is another thing you're
yeah.
taking
So
up.
this is
So
one film which also I'll tell you the motivation of it. I met one of my gurus in a festival, and he's this legendary guy, and he looked at Death of Father. He was very kind to it. He said nice things about it, but he also said that it was a little inconsistent, and I know what he meant. I think him and his guru, the guy I am talking about is this guy called Richard Williams. Sadly, he's no more. He's a legend. I don't know if you know. There was this film called Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's one of the first
okay.
films which mixed way before Space Jam. It mixed 2D animation with live action. Richard Williams and his, not guru essentially, but he used to admire that guy's work, called Milk Car. So
Got it.
I am trying to look at all these people's works and trying to do something which is still contextual to my culture, you know. So yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Great. Now I want to like touch upon your artwork, okay, your illustrations. I find it fascinating. Again, for the listeners, Somnath has an Instagram page. It's old underscore QFWFQ, right? I found it fascinating. I mean, that, and also, of course, there's the whole Super Ani artist work that you do. A lot of it is available if somebody's interested in purchasing the artwork. Tell us more a little bit about your illustrations, your artwork. What are your motivations, inspirations?
So a couple of things. So first, Superani is more of an umbrella collective. So there was
Got it.
the late legend Master Kim Jung-gi and Master Hyunjin. They founded Super Rani. Hyunjin decided to publish books of Master Jungi under the
Got it.
banner of Super Rani. So earlier it was only these two people. And as they traveled across the world, they found more artists and they kind of included them in their banner.
Okay, so you're one of those artists as part of that
It
collective.
is extremely flattering to say that, but the whole conflict is that you always find yourself a misfit, right? When you look at all these brilliant artists, and then you look at your work and you feel, oh, I'm just faffing my way through, that sort of a thing. So there's self doubt, is that's part of my existence, I guess. But yeah, in 2019, they kind of had a look at my work, and I ended up showing my sketchbook to Master Hyunjin, and yeah, they were extremely kind, both Master Hyunjin and Master Kim Jungi. He initially had a look and he said, "Okay, I'm a little busy right now. I'll come back to you later." And he was so nice that he spotted me and he came to me and he said, "Now you show me your sketchbook." He was kind of guy. As far as my artwork is concerned, it's a very conflicted stand that I have, and I have to be honest to you and to myself, and that's why I'll share it honestly. When I make films, I have a certain approach. My films are very different from my drawings. My drawings are aimed at fascinating people. They include violence, but not in a flattering way. They talk about all the aspects that I have been a part of, like as a kid, of bullying, of self doubt, of all of that. I use body to kind of be the channel through which I represent that. But I make sure that I don't glamorize violence. It's meant to be a little bit of quirk. There's a little bit
Got
of
it.
quirk to it. Like you might have a look and have a chuckle at it. Like, oh, you know,
Hmm.
he has two elbows, or he sits in a weird way, or that sort of a thing. In some ways, and I do it because I'm aware that that is the kind of work that goes on to my portfolio, my Instagram, my all of that. I'm very aware of that. So in some ways, if you say that am I catering to a certain audience, I don't think I am, because I don't keep my audience in mind. But in some way I am, because there is a certain kind of drawing that I do. You understand?
Got it. Got it.
So I am uh, uh, if you look at it, my animation is like the drawings that I make for my animation films are not like the drawings that I make for my Instagram channel. They are very different. So I'm sharing this with you. It could be a make or break. People might hate me for this.
I'm sure
Uh,
they won't because I loved it. I loved your work on your Instagram page, and I'm sure a lot of people will find a lot of interesting work. Of course, art has to provoke at some
and
level.
and I also agree that there is an element of bipolarity to it, and I embrace that bipolarity. I somehow I have realized that there is a bipolarity that exists in my life. I can't get
Hmm.
rid of it. Like as a kid, I was conflicted between art and maths, which one to pursue. And I took up maths first, and then now I've taken up arts, but now I still find maths fascinating. So I go back to some of those ideas and appreciate them. Even with films, my films are more subtle, they're more nuanced, they're not exhibitionist. But here there's a different approach. So, and I like that bipolarity. I'm beginning to embrace it as a part of my existence.
No, but I have to say, fascinating work, and we let the listeners decide. I'll share the link, and if you
Yeah.
see your following increases over the next few days, you know that they're liking your work. I'm hoping there are
Yeah.
enough that many listeners to the show to start with, but yeah, fascinating work. Okay, cool. Now, Somnath, as you know, this podcast is called Magnificent Misfits. You've, of course, spoken about how you felt like you're a misfit and things like that. I mean, right from the time you were a child. My question is more around when did you first accept that you're a misfit and accept yourself for who you are? What was that process like? What were some of the internal challenges you faced to finally go through that journey and say, hey, you know what? I'm good the way I am.
Oh, that happened really late. Uh, I mean, one would want to imagine that happened early on in my career when I moved from engineering to maths,
Hmm.
sorry, engineering to arts, but not really. I would say that happened in the last 2, 3 years, maybe.
Really?
Yeah,
That recent?
that recent. So funnily, like when I say it wasn't that I wasn't a misfit in arts. Like when I got into arts, I realized that is extremely demanding. There is this idea behind creativity, that there are these floating colors, lines, or whatever, which creativity strikes, and you will. Some people get into, I don't know, narcotics, might be a very loaded term. And if you look at me, I am not like your, I don't look like an artist. I have the least vibe of an artist. I have the vibe of a UP bhaiya, to be honest. Like the rickshaw walas will relate to me than anybody else. So, but when I got into IDC, that was a massive challenge. I realized I wasn't a good fit even there. There were people who had made films, who knew more about the craft than me, even though I used to doodle and I came from an arts background. But it was like animation was a very humbling experience for me. Like the 2 years that I spent in IDC, the first year was constantly in self doubt whether I did the right thing or not. And you won't believe, even like when I'd done Candy Tree and when I'd done Vishwarakshak and when I graduated, I did not feel a part of the community. I I never felt that I was an artist. I remember Chaitanya, like when they would ask me as to what I am, it would it would require me so much effort to use the word that I'm an artist, not because I'm ashamed. That circuit to be an artist is very glamorous because they look
Yeah.
up to you. And I did not have the courage to tell them honestly that, you know, I'm an artist. Because I always felt that I'm faffing. I still don't know. And I remember there is this incident where I was doing animation on the Candy Tree and I was not cracking a bit. Like I was really frustrated. And I was walking out and there was this Purana Godrej type Almira, and
Okay.
I banged my head onto it and went out
Okay.
in anger. And fortunately there was nobody there. But that is how frustrated I was. I did not feel a part of it. And then I obviously I met friends as well. Bhanu, Anand Radhakrishnan. These were the people who kind of, along with Chaitanya as well. Chaitanya has been a massive influence. Chaitanya was the one who kind of gave me the vocabulary or the understanding of the direction that I wanted to take. So all of these people, when you interact with them, and then you realize that they suffer from the same fears.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, isn't imposter syndrome kind of like a thing most of us have? I'm not saying,
Yeah,
not even successful people. I'll say everyone, even people
yeah.
who may not be successful, right?
There's an interesting anecdote by Neil Gaiman, right?
Okay, which is?
Oh, you don't know this, Acha?
No, I don't.
So Neil Gaiman is in this party and he's like hanging around with people, and he's looking around and everybody is like he is beginning to doubt himself. He's like, wow, all these guys are like pinnacle of their fields.
Uh-huh.
They have achieved everything, and I'm just a writer. Like I don't even know where do I fit in. And then there is this older guy he meets, and they bond over the fact that both of them are Neil, and it's like, oh, acha, acha. The other guy starts sharing that, oh, you are a writer. Oh, I love writers, man. You guys are, I'm just a nobody, and all of that happens. And he realizes that he's also suffering from imposter syndrome. And guess who the other guy was?
No, I have no clue. I have no clue.
He was an astronaut, and
Oh,
he was the guy who
really?
landed on the moon.
Oh, Neil Armstrong.
Neil Armstrong.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
so both of them are, yeah, are suffering from imposter syndrome in a party. They're looking at everybody else, and so I don't deny that there might be an element of truth to it, but the other thing that you can't deny is that constant question that you face is real, right? That's a
Yes.
part of your existence, and no matter what you do, where you go, you can sometimes figure out a way to distract it by focusing on something else. But if your personality is that, you will always it'll always be with you. So you can't really say that you are a good artist and you suffer from imposter syndrome. You don't think in those terms, right? You
Right.
constantly doubt yourself because that is your reality. A lot of people whom I've met and whom for whom I have a lot of respect, they are constantly riddled by this.
And what changed 3 years back? You said about 2 or 3 years back. I don't know if it was an incident or was it like it just happened with time that you started feeling like, okay, I'm not a misfit anymore. I kind of belong.
So, okay, the honest answer is after a certain age, you have the maturity to just give up. I was like,
Hmm.
ठीक है यार, yes, I'm not good, but let us just do this shit.
So it is more like acceptance setting in, I
It's just
guess.
it is just acceptance, nothing else. So even
Hmm.
now, if you say, "Am I a misfit?" I mean, in every walk of life, I still feel like a misfit.
Hmm.
Uh, like if I'm exposed to my demons, if my
Hmm.
demons are right in front of me, they'll eat me up alive. Because from being a son to being a
Hmm.
husband to being a father, and I'm not even a very old father, like in the sense that I became a father only 8 months back. But
Hmm.
you constantly, there is always this feeling that, I could have been a better father if I would have done this, that
Right.
sort of a thing. And it always stays there. The only thing that over a period of time you essentially make peace with is that, okay, you are here. Can
Right.
you change what has already been done? No, right? So
Right.
let's just take measured steps. It's almost like, when there is a phase when somebody is wanting to be healthy and they are constantly looking into the mirror and doubting themselves, and, they're not. And then there is this one moment which comes, which says, okay, you are this. You can't really change anything. Like, you can't change the past.
Right.
Let's, from now onwards, let's just take measured steps towards this. And it's only in retrospect, only up to
Right.
like 5 years, in 5 years duration, that you realize, okay, there is something that I have achieved.
Right. Okay.
So and in the last 3 years, so earlier I was very self-centric. I think that's the only, possibly the only thing that I would want to say. I was very self-centric in the sense that I have to make a film, I have to make a short, I have to make a feature, I have to make a this, I have to make a that. Now, what I've come to realize is that potentially I can't do it all, right? I will, probability theory, right? It's an extremely humbling parameter in my life. Things have to work around in a certain way so that I get to make a film, or I get to, be somewhere and do something else. And if those things are not happening, let's work towards what are happening. I realize I lost that self-centered approach, like me being the epicenter of everything. Now I have started sponsoring more films, because I realized independent voices. The reason why independent voices don't really they fade away, because this whole sustenance kind of takes the better of them.
Yeah.
So I realized, if I can just sponsor those film projects, and they can possibly find some audience, then we will figure out a good way to, keep independent films alive. All of this, I'm trying to do it under the banner of Goya.
Okay.
So, so it'll be a Goya product. Right now, we are doing like two. There are two films we have already sponsored. One is Mati Tel, which is competing in Annecy this year. The other
Nice.
film is the Jujube Tree. It's a coming of age film set in Assam. Then there's another film that we are sponsoring, which is also a very interesting take. It's still not done, but it's also cultural conflict. So that's how this phase has, for me, has started. Where I'm,
Got it.
and the more you do it, the more you accept it. The biggest pillar of strength for me definitely was my wife. I mean, back then she was just my girlfriend. So there was a 5 year period where I was full of self doubt, also not earning. And Moshmi, we got married in 2015. But even before we got married, Mosh just gave me the room to kind of be myself. She held the fort for a while, and that was essential for me, because any kind of creative pursuit, no matter how fascinating it sounds, the journey sounds very fascinating in retrospect, but quite honestly, the challenges are real. And it's because she was there throughout that, I mean, even when I lost belief in myself, she didn't.
Thanks for sharing that. I think that gives a lot of perspective on what exactly you meant by that change and acceptance. So fascinating. Thanks for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cool. So now, Somnath, we head to the last section of our podcast. Okay. So this is called shorts. What this section has essentially is questions which will have an agree or disagree, yes or no kind of component to it, and you have to give a one-line description justifying why you picked what you picked. Okay, so the first one, doing art or illustrations to make a living is a tough proposition, but a satisfying one. Agree or disagree?
To an extent, I agree. But at the same time, everything can't be black on white, right? There might be some disagreements to it as well. But largely, I do agree.
Okay, the second one, similar question but different domain. Making movies is an extremely tough profession and it requires extreme levels of passion to go through the grind. Agree or disagree?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think we underestimate the filmmaking process. The cursory viewer looks at story and plot and all of that. But then the more you get into it, it's a rabbit hole which has no end. And some of the filmmakers I admire, they have done such abstract work that it's difficult to see the meaning in them sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
And it's only when you familiarize with the context in which they were doing it, do you eventually realize what they were trying to achieve. So yeah, it's an extremely demanding idea. That is what makes it fascinating as well. So what I wanted to say, imagine a partner who is
Yeah.
very challenging to woo. You immediately get this. You take it up as a challenge, right? You try and woo that person. You make attempts to woo that person. You
Yeah.
try harder to to impress him or her.
Yeah.
So
Kind of related to the last one, okay? So you as in Somnath, so you empathize with filmmakers, even filmmakers who've made pathetic movies, very bad movies. Agree or disagree? So-called pathetic. I don't want to be the
no,
one
no, I
tagging it,
understand.
but
I
yeah.
understand. See, again, I look at it in as I told you, I don't have a black or white to it.
Hmm.
Uh, there are some with which it is very difficult to empathize. You understand? Because there are multiple parameters, right? And if they are right on more parameters than less, then you figure out a way to empathize with them. But if they are
Hmm.
wrong on more parameters, then why are you here? You know,
Hmm.
if it is a convenient choice that has been passed to you by the fact that you are a part of the industry, then maybe this is not for you.
Yeah.
Maybe find something else. So yeah.
Okay, cool. The next one, I think I know the answer to this. You did kind of speak about this, but I'll still put it to you anyways. Your movies, short films, are a much closer representation of who you are as a person than your illustrations. Agree or
Yeah,
disagree?
yeah, 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 yeah. Weirdly, in both of them, thematically there are similarities. But
Hmm.
when I have to execute them, I their execution is like poles apart. It's day and night. Both have shades of me criticizing myself. Like I have to criticize the society, then I have to figure out my participation in the society and what bit of it that I disagree with. When it comes to illustration, it is a little different. It is more about making fun of myself.
Okay. And interestingly, I mean, it's so happening. My next question is kind of related to that.
Yeah.
Art or artists are rebels, inherently rebels. Agree or disagree?
I think humans are inherently rebels. I mean,
Okay.
even if you take up mathematics, there is a summation of the series 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus what dot infinity. Even for a mathematician, the
Yeah.
natural idea will be that it sums up to infinity, right? But there is a proof that exists which where the solution is -1/12,
Okay. Interesting.
right? The
Okay.
idea of being imaginative is being a rebel, right? I mean, it'll be extremely snobbish of me to say that artists are rebels.
I guess anyone who tries to achieve anything out of the ordinary has
Yeah,
to somewhere rebel.
yeah. One has to be a nutcrack to kind of just be fascinated by something and just silence all the noise around, which
Yeah.
refrains him from pursuing that fascination, right?
Okay, cool. So done with the shots, but I do have a couple of other questions which are
Sure.
to understand you. So one is a book or a book that inspires you in your
Oh,
moments of low.
that is a tough one. So I don't really have that kind of a
So I
book.
have a
So I'm
separate
not a
question on a movie also, by the way.
huh,
But
no.
yeah,
So I'm not a fiction guy, to be honest. Like a lot of people have tried to make me read through fiction, and thanks to them, but I've never been the kind of guy who likes fiction. The kind of books that I like are like extremely difficult book, and I don't recommend it purely because I come across as an idiot recommending it. But it's a fun book if you can read it. It's called Godar Eshel Bak.
okay.
Godel Escher Bak. It's by Douglas Hofstadter.
Oh,
And if
interesting.
you can't read the book, then maybe there is if I'm not wrong, there is an MIT course lecture on it. So
Okay.
if you can go through it as well. There's also this book by Schrodinger, actually. What is life? Now I know the name sounds very pretentious, but the
Hmm.
book isn't. The book is very, I don't know. I don't want to put it in words.
Okay.
I'm not capable enough, but these two. So the other book that I was recommending was like I recently read it and it is a fun book. It's called Alice and Bob Meet the Wall of Fire. There is also this book called Lessons with Kiarostami. That is a book which kind of encapsulates the philosophy of filmmaking, and
Okay.
I found my soul in that book. Honestly,
Wow. Okay.
yeah.
Interesting.
So
Same
yeah.
question on movie or series or short films. Is there one
Um,
or few that inspire you in your moments
right.
of low?
There are a few, obviously. My favoriteest, and I just cry like a baby when I see that film, is this film called Paradise Love by Ulrich Seidel. It's on sex tourism and it has a lot of graphic scenes. I don't want to spoil the plot, but anyway,
Okay.
it's a
Sure.
really heart wrenching film for me.
Okay.
For animation, for me, I mean, there is Mind Games. There's also, purely for the craft, I would say there is this film called The Thief and the Cobbler by
Is it a
Richard
short
Williams.
film?
It never got done. So
Hmm.
they released an incomplete version of it on DVD. And then there are these uh, comfort films, right? Like Jaane Bhi Do Yaaron, to an extent, Andaz Apna Apna,
Uh,
those kind of films. So those are the desi, अरे हाँ, मतलब brainless में देखना है, मेरे को मजे करने हैं,
uh,
that sort of a thing. So yeah.
got it. Okay. Somnath, this has been a pleasure talking to you and knowing about your life, your some of the decisions you took, inspirations, your thought
Thank you.
process, and being so candid in sharing all the stuff that you did. This has been fascinating, and I also feel like now we can do like separate. I mean, there's so much you have to share that we could do like separate episodes on short films, animation, on your illustrations, on your inspirations.
It was an absolute pleasure. But I hope you got. I remember when we first discussed it, one of the things that you had told me is that you wanted a certain kind of honesty from me. I wanted to be that.
Thank you, thank you. So I really appreciate that you took the time out, to
It was a
be to
pleasure. It
do
was an
this and be
absolute
so
pleasure.
candid. So that was today's episode. Before I wrap up, I want to take a moment to express my gratitude to you for tuning in. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, I'd like to ask for your help in spreading the word about the podcast. If you think there's someone in your life who might enjoy listening to the Magnificent Misfits podcast, please consider sharing it with them. Also, if you're active on social media, we'd love for you to give us a shout out and tag us at MN Podcast Show. That's MN Podcast Show. Thank you and see you soon.